Unit 731. History's Darkest Laboratory. They were called logs, not humans. Discover the terrifying secret of Unit 731, where doctors became monsters. Witness the declassified truth of history's darkest lab. Subscribe to uncover the unseen.
In the frozen expanse of northeastern China, shadows gather. Near Harbin, an innocuous building hides a dark truth. To casual observers, it was a disease prevention lab. But within these walls lurked unimaginable, cold-blooded human horror. This was Unit 731, Japan's clandestine biological warfare facility. Here, medical science twisted into an instrument of death. The year was 1932 in deeply scarred, occupied Manchuria. Ambitions of conquest burned, fueled by a perverse curiosity. How could human suffering and disease become weaponized tools? Commanded by Shirō Ishii, the epicenter of grotesque war. Ishii was charismatic, respected by peers, feared by subordinates. He believed conventional warfare was too slow and inefficient. The true power of war lay in invisible enemies. Bullets and bombs were replaced by deadly, silent pathogens. The army must embrace the unseen, he once wrote. Invisible enemies are always the most lethal and silent. The facility was sprawling, hidden behind heavy barbed wire. Armed soldiers guarded the secrets of this dark compound. Inside, laboratories hummed with intense, unnatural, terrifying scientific activity. Prisoners arrived under the false guise of mere detention. Mostly Chinese civilians, Russian captives, Koreans, and Allied prisoners. Stripped of their identities, they were reduced to numbers. They faced experiments so brutal, words can barely capture. Prisoners were kept starving in freezing, ice-cold prison cells. Left untreated for illnesses, they awaited further cruel experimentation. Vivisection without anesthesia became a routine, horrifying daily practice. Doctors dissected lungs and livers while subjects were alive. They observed how lethal diseases spread internally in real time. Limbs were amputated to study gangrene and severe frostbite. New weapons were tested on these living human specimens. Grenades, flamethrowers, and chemical agents destroyed their fragile bodies. Biological warfare became the ultimate focus of Unit 731. Researchers deliberately infected prisoners with cholera, plague, and anthrax. Some were injected with pathogens directly into their bloodstream. Others were exposed to contaminated food or flea bites. The purpose was both coldly scientific and highly militaristic. They aimed to weaponize diseases against entire enemy populations. Entire villages were later bombarded with plague-infected insect fleas. This led to massive outbreaks that killed thousands instantly. Yet victims were merely reduced to cold data points. Numbers on a chart were just a means to ends. The first victims lived in constant, unimaginable daily fear. Many died slowly in agony as their bodies failed. They watched their own flesh turn violently against them. We witness how disease transformed into a brutal weapon. We see how deeply dehumanizing the entire process was. The cruel facade masked a reality of endless pain. Behind the barbed wire, humanity was completely stripped away. The chilling legacy of Unit 731 begins to unfold. Innocent lives were swallowed by the machinery of war. The experiments and bureaucracy. Inside the cold, antiseptic halls, the brutal experiments escalated. Scope and brutality expanded beyond any recognizable medical ethics. Prisoners of all ages were stripped of their names. Men, women, and children lost all traces of identity. To the scientists, they were no longer living people. They were test subjects, objects to study and discard. The chilling term Maruta was used to describe them. This translates to logs, reflecting total, absolute human dehumanization. One primary focus remained the perfection of biological warfare. Pathogens like cholera and typhoid invaded innocent human bodies. Prisoners were forced to ingest contaminated food and water. Lethal doses of bacteria were injected directly into veins. Scientists observed the cruel progression of disease in real time. They meticulously documented the fever, vomiting, and internal hemorrhaging. They watched clinically as entire organ systems slowly failed. Some prisoners were dissected alive to track internal spread. This horrifying process shattered every standard of medical morality. Medical research twisted into a dark instrument of suffering. Records show scientists carefully measured body temperature and pressure. Heart rates and physiological indicators were tracked over days. They removed organs mid-experiment to examine the infection's path. Death was treated as a data point, never tragedy. These were systematic attempts to gather vital, lethal information. Dehumanization made this extreme level of clinical cruelty possible. Clinical records continually overshadowed any remaining sense of dignity. Another set of tests focused on absolute extreme conditions. Cold, frostbite, exposure, and trauma were weaponized against subjects. In freezing winters, prisoners were forced outdoors without protection. Their fragile limbs were exposed to sub-zero, freezing temperatures. Scientists tested ways to induce and treat severe frostbite. They immersed limbs in icy water, then hot water. They rubbed skin with snow and applied electric currents. When limbs froze solid, many quickly became necrotic gangrene. These ruined limbs were amputated without any pain relief. Many prisoners died from secondary infections and blood loss. The cruelty did not stop at disease or cold. The unit also tested devastating weapons on live bodies. Grenades, flamethrowers, rifles, and bayonets were used on prisoners. They studied the horrific effects of explosives and burns. The body's response to shrapnel trauma was carefully recorded. Time to death and organ damage were coldly analyzed. The target for these weapons tests was human life. Victims were misled, arrested under incredibly vague, false pretenses. They were told they were being detained or treated. Scientists and guards used euphemisms and cold clinical language. Bureaucratic methods detached the staff from the immense suffering. The research was scheduled, documented, and analyzed with precision. Pain and death were mere variables in an experiment. Institutionalized cruelty treated suffering as standard, everyday scientific output. Horrors were carried out with a chilling, terrifying normalcy. The declassified evidence and legacy. In August 2025, the Harbin exhibition hall opened doors. Newly declassified materials documented the horrific crimes committed there. The release included over 3,000 pages of archives. 194 minutes of video footage emerged globally. 312 photographs showed the absolute, grim reality. 12 postcards and 8 letters provided deeply personal proof. This offered the most detailed evidence of these atrocities. It proved the organized biological and chemical warfare operations. Systematic human experimentation was undeniable in these new records. Curators confirmed the evidence originated from official Japanese archives. First-hand oral testimony from former personnel added chilling context. Private Japanese sources also donated crucial, long-hidden historical materials. The publicized records further reinforced the global historical consensus. Unit 731 was not a series of isolated abuses. It was a centrally planned, state-directed germ warfare program. Human rights atrocities were orchestrated at the highest levels. Located in Heilongjiang Province, the museum presents full scope. It reveals the covert biological and chemical warfare base. Historical records displayed indicate 3,000 lethal human experiments. These fatal trials occurred between 1940 and 1945 exactly. The museum exhibits highlight a staggering, heartbreaking civilian toll. More than 300,000 Chinese civilians lost lives. Japan's biological warfare during that period caused immense devastation. Curator Jean Chengmin notes the documented history is brutal. It is far worse than anything shown in films. The museum's photographs and artifacts immerse every visiting guest. Instructional materials reveal the stark reality of war crimes. Visitors are often left visibly moved by their encounters. The technical analysis proves a deeply systemic, cold bureaucracy. Personal survival narratives are scarce in these dark halls. The voices of the victims were silenced by science. Yet their memories are preserved in these harrowing archives. The evidence ensures the world will never forget them. A dark chapter of human history is finally exposed. The shadow of Unit 731 serves as a warning. Science devoid of morality leads to unspeakable, immense tragedy. We must remember the victims reduced to mere logs. Their suffering demands acknowledgement from a modern, watchful world. The exhibition stands as a testament to their agony. It forces humanity to confront its own darkest capabilities. The truth can no longer hide behind barbed wire. Declassified documents shine light on the shadows of war. The grim legacy of Harbin will echo through time. We bear witness to the lives stolen by cruelty. The meticulous records of death now serve as justice. A silent memorial to those who perished in agony. Their stories rise from the ashes of forgotten history. May the world learn from this devastating, tragic past. The victims of Unit 731 will finally be remembered. Their humanity has been restored through these preserved truths.